Next up, we have a conversation between Kaili Wang, an engineer at Privy, and Michael Riley, my colleague and founding editor at Project Glitch. Kaili and Michael will discuss the facts on the ground as Kaili sees them when it comes to the demand for privacy on the part of businesses.
Hello, thank you. I'm Michael Riley. I'm another founding editor at Project Glitch, where we find stablecoins so boring we organized a whole summit around them. And with us is, I'm very excited to have Kaili Wang here today. As Mike said, she is a brilliant software engineer at Privy. Before that, she was a brilliant privacy researcher. But Kaili, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey from privacy researcher, kind of interested in privacy before it was cool. It's become very cool in the last year, but you were doing it long before that. And then to becoming kind of an expert on stable coins and privacy-enabled stable coins.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Maybe I'll start out with a spicy fun fact that not many people know about for me. I did my first major crypto project while I was in college, and it was with Tornado Cash. And I know that FBI is in the room, so I'll put a disclaimer that I did not work on the actual protocol, but a couple of friends and I got a grant from Tornado Cash to basically build an anonymity evaluation tool for Tornado Cash users and for Ethereum users, kind of like a haveibeenpwned.com, if you guys know about that. And that got me really fascinated about privacy tech. And even going to crypto, the technology is what really fascinated me. So the next summer, I went to go intern at Privy, which was about 4 people at the time. It actually used to be a privacy startup before what it is known for today as a wallet infrastructure provider. That's where the name comes from, Privy. So
what was behind the pivot, if I could ask?
Well, actually, mainly the topic of this fireside chat, which is about demand. So they were serving, basically encrypting PII for apps wallet users so that the apps can send notifications to the users and whatnot. And they found that there are no people with wallets at the time. So then they switched over to why people don't have wallets, and that's because of bad UX. So after that, went to go start the research team at Circle, where I worked on confidential ERC20, among a few other things, with Inco, and went to Privy after that. So currently, I lead some of our engineering development for enterprise-facing product areas, and Privy got acquired by Stripe about 9 months ago. So that's where I ended up.
That's your journey. For those of us who aren't like totally familiar, what is Privy all about? Like, what does it do? And what does it allow that hasn't happened yet, or hasn't been able to be, for folks haven't been able to do until Privy was in existence?
Yeah, so Privy provides wallet infrastructure for developers that want to provision wallets for their users. So what that means is, let's say you're an app or enterprise. I mostly work with enterprises, so I'll use that as an example. And you want to start using stablecoins in your product. That's where you would come to Privy, and Privy just makes that very easy for you. It started out with self-custodial embedded wallets, and now it kind of brings everything that you would need with stablecoins into the fold. So it used to be for more crypto-centric companies, but in the past year plus, basically, we've worked with a lot of the major fintechs and enterprises like Klarna, Deal, Revolut, Ramp, are just a few, and I spend a lot of time with them.
So it allows people to sort of customers to define their own custody settings in a sense, and to do so in a way that is a lot more user-friendly than previously was available. Okay.
I could give like an example.
I was gonna ask, and maybe this can cut to your example too. Is like, okay, so that's the custody settings.
Yeah.
Within that, like what sort of, like, are people coming to you and saying, Kaili, I need privacy so badly? Like, where does privacy fit into that?
Yes, so this might be hard for some people in the room to hear, but no one has really come to us and been like, we need privacy so badly. They come to us to enable stablecoins in their app because they want fast and cheap payments globally. And I think one of the enterprises I work with said it best. Like, they don't see it as a launch blocker right now, but they see it in the future as something like SOC 2 compliance, where this is a checkbox that they want to check in the medium long term. They think that their customers, which often are businesses themselves, will want privacy, or at least one of them will be very opinionated about privacy, and they want to be able to not get sued and basically keep that customer. So that's sort of how I've seen businesses think about that.
Okay. And you said you had an example, like a specific example that you wanted to share.
So I'll use Ramp, who just launched their stablecoin accounts last week, and they use Privy. So if I guess people probably know Ramp, but if you don't, they're a corporate card expense management platform. And if you're a business using Ramp, then you can now go into your Ramp dashboard and open up a stablecoin account where you can accept stablecoin payments, pay vendors internationally with stablecoins, even hold stablecoins. So that's a really exciting product, in my opinion. And to do that, they use Privy wallets. So as a customer of Ramp, you will then be provisioned a wallet where you hold these stablecoins, and Ramp essentially just uses Privy as a API that they can use to make that super easy. So yeah.
Okay, and so customers aren't crying out for privacy from the hilltops, but you have seen some approaches to sort of practical privacy. Maybe you could take us through what that's like.
Yeah. So the businesses that I've seen that ask about privacy, in a more forward-thinking way, are like vendor, in the use case of vendor payments, payroll, for companies like Deal, and it's interesting to see what level of privacy, or maybe I'll call it pseudo-privacy, some of these enterprises are okay with for now. So one example.
Why do you call it pseudo-privacy? What is pseudo-privacy versus privacy?
It's more like obfuscation as opposed to privacy. I think researchers would get offended if we called this real privacy. Just making it harder to figure out what's going on. It's basically, security by inconvenience. And so one example is one of our enterprises uses Bridge liquidation addresses. So Bridge is another Stripe company. They provide this product where you can spin up an address that will essentially bridge into another chain when you deposit into that address. And for this enterprise, that level of broken linkage and obfuscation is enough for them, just because you can't easily look on the Transaction Explorer to see who you're sending to. So it's not true privacy because you can actually just watch other chains and see, where the funds are actually being bridged to. Another example is, we have a enterprise that makes white label debit cards attached to crypto wallets, and they care about privacy for consumer spending. So people don't know where you're, spending your Visa credit card, and they do end-of-day batching of transactions. So if you have 5 transactions that because you spent your card 5 times that day, then they just do 1 transaction at the end of the day. So that's what I mean by pseudo privacy, because if you spent once during that day, I mean, people know how much you spent, and yeah.
Yeah. So Dante in the previous conversation said something really interesting, which was, he said many interesting things, but one thing that I think is relevant here is he was saying that he believes that the true sort of potential of stablecoins can't be realized without some privacy component. And I'm curious, since you're in these sort of very pragmatic, practical discussions with your customers, are you saying to them at all, are you counseling them in some regard, like, hey, like that this may be the case, like, okay, we get this is what you see your customers' needs are, meaning their customers, right? But maybe you want to think about adding further layers of privacy or stronger privacy. Where are those conversations at?
Yeah, we try not to push additional requirements onto our customers, but and this kind of gets into the current challenges with privacy today, which is like on the compliance side. So these are enterprises and institutions that run their own compliance programs. Even if even if they're using like self-custodial wallets and they don't necessarily have to do sanction screenings, they still want an extra layer, prompted by them. So they use like TRM, chain analysis, just for their app and for their users. And so if they were to use privacy today, they have to take on that extra burden of figuring out how to do compliance with that in place. Yeah.
And I mean, like, what does a world look like, just to kind of explore that possibility without private stablecoins, or stablecoin adoption continues apace, but we don't have privacy? Is it, as some people have suggested, kind of like a perfect, like a panopticon situation with like perfect surveillance? And does that matter, on a practical way?
Yeah, I think in a sense we sort of have that today with the current enterprise adoption of, because they're not really employing privacy, they actually, I guess privacy is a double-edged sword. They actually like the transparency of the ledger. They don't have to keep a database of how much their users have, and they just, depend on the chain as their accounting system. So I think and I do think that privacy will become more important in the coming years and become more prevalent as like market demand, that we're going to have to solve the compliance, UX, and privacy problems all in one.
Well, where do you think, if you're not seeing the market demand now, where do you think that might come from?
A privacy breach that really scares everyone away. Maybe with that or without that, regulations. Because at the end of the day, businesses care mostly about two things. One is getting revenue, and the other is not getting sued. And I guess the third thing they care about is, how easy it is to build what they're trying to build, and that's where like the UX comes into play. But I think from the market demand side, it'll be more of a like slow and then all at once. So, say like HTTPS, no one was actively looking for HTTPS. No one signs up for a website because it has HTTPS, but websites don't launch without it. So I think at a certain point, it will become table stakes, and everyone will start using it.
Like a launch blocker, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious about, we have not yet gotten into talking about zero knowledge proofs and fully homomorphic encryption and other sort of like really high level sort of privacy enabling technologies. And we will. I'm curious whether those technologies feel like, to you, now this is again asking you to prognosticate a little bit, but like those are the things that we'll grow into or as an industry, or that will be grown into as an industry, or are they maybe folks pushing a boundary that, like, I don't know that we necessarily get to or that the industry doesn't get to in the sense of a need? Because right now you're saying customers don't need this, right? Fundamentally, or they say they
Right
don't
now,
need it.
as launch workers, yeah.
Yeah. Do we get there? Is that kind of, for lack of a better term, fancy privacy technology, something that will become part of those table stakes?
It really depends on the use case. Like, I think, I guess I would urge all founders and builders to be really close to the customer and who you're trying to solve problems for, and what their trust assumptions are. So for instance, most businesses don't really need perfect privacy. They just, again, don't want to be sued. And they also don't care about, or they don't mind the government seeing the transactions that are being facilitated in their product. They don't mind their infrastructure providers seeing their data. So at Privy, we use TEs, and I was having a discussion with a researcher recently on different types of TEs. And the researcher was like, don't you worry about AWS Nitro enclaves being like accessible by AWS? Like, you can, if you get locked out, you can just call up AWS, which means they can access your TEE. And most businesses don't mind. They actually like prefer to have that, just if all else fails, they can go to someone for help and get them back in. So that's an example of like, TEs are, a great example of a technology that works with a lot of people's trust assumptions. The fancier ones might actually fit a certain subset of people who really need that like, stronger privacy guarantee. So I definitely don't think the advances in cryptography and like all these fancy tech is wasted at all, but probably the majority or like your average Joe business may not need that level. Yeah.
So you would counsel something like, don't build it unless you need it?
Yes, totally. Yeah.
When in our prep call, we talked a little bit about this, and you said you had some experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think most researchers probably have. I worked on recoverability, like what reversible transactions would look like if there was a hack or theft. Came up with a super like fancy algorithm that could happen on chain. But in the TradFi world, you just solve that by, suing the the bad actor. And I think there's I guess using FHE as opposed to like TEs for the common average Joe business is another example. Definitely have made the mistake of trying to solve for maybe non-existent demand or future demand, and it's definitely, as like someone who can get nerd sniped into things, that's an easy pitfall.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like for the lawyers in the room, and they would probably enjoy the mantra, something like "When in doubt, sue the bad actors," right? Cool. Well, we have a couple minutes. 1 minute, I guess. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask Kaili? You can open the floor for a minute. We have one in the back there. Yeah.
Hi, Tyler. So my question is related to a lot of these like HTTPS protocols, and just this idea, I guess, that's building of having agents sitting between the wallet and whatever they're interacting with on chain. And this kind of gets presented as being self-custody because of this air gap. But if we take an example of like Stripe or what Coinbase is building, the execution layer and actually the re-amalgamating of the key all exists within these environments that are being produced by these companies. And I just say that is that a concern at all from like a legal perspective? Because isn't this in a way, if there's decentralization here, you could already make an argument that, well, this is self-custody.
Our legal team has a lot to say about that. Yes, I mean, to take an example, MetaMask, everyone pretty much agrees that MetaMask is self-custodial because custody is defined by how a system is designed, not necessarily based on, if MetaMask went rogue, what could happen? Like MetaMask can technically inject a bug in their software because you use MetaMask in the browser, you're accessing it through MetaMask code. So technically the code could have a bug that sends your private key somewhere else. And so does that mean that MetaMask technically is a custodian? No. So that applies to basically all self-custodial cases, including agentic payments, which are super hot right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we have one. Yeah, we don't have more time, but let's do it anyway, real quick. Yeah.
Do you find that any of your corporate customers are worried about or that your business customers are worried about corporate espionage, that all of their transactions and their information are available to their competitors as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned earlier the vendor payment use case as coming up as a privacy use case. We've heard enterprises that fall into that category being worried about their payments to vendors being visible to the vendors' competitors because, for business reasons. And so that's definitely a very common.
That's still not creating demand for privacy.
It's, again, it kind of comes back to obfuscation. So if these enterprises tend to hope that no one's looking too closely. And I think today that's probably true for most of the case. If they can obfuscate just enough and not have true privacy, that's okay for launch. But this is definitely something that they're thinking about medium, long term. And again, it's like the B2B businesses that we see that care more about these use cases because their businesses, their customers might have these concerns, like what you're saying.
Okay, great. Thank you so much,
Thank
Kaili.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks.